Tonight on Primetime, a historic shift at the United Nations. The Security Council has voted overwhelmingly to lift sanctions on Syria's new leadership, opening the door for President Ahmed al-Sharar's White House visit. 14 members backed the US drafted resolution, with only China abstaining. Nations unite then around the hope of a stable and sanction-free Syria. Good evening. The Security Council has voted to lift years of sanctions on Syria's new leadership, ending more than a decade of isolation. Well, the move, seen as a turning point for Damascus, comes just days before President Ahmed al-Sharar's scheduled visit to the White House.
The United Nations Security Council has lifted sanctions on Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharar and Interior Minister Anas Khattab. The US drafted resolution passed on Thursday with 14 votes in favour, while China abstained. Russia backed the resolution, with its UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia saying it reflected the interests and aspirations of the Syrian people. China abstained from the vote, citing concerns over the resolution's approach to counter-terrorism in Syria.
Colleagues, with the adoption of this text, the Council is sending a strong political signal that recognizes Syria is in a new era since Assad and his associates were toppled in December 2024. There is a new Syrian government in place, led by President Ahmed al-Sharar, that is working hard to fulfill its commitments on countering terrorism and narcotics, on eliminating any remnants of chemical weapons, and promoting regional security and stability, as well as an inclusive, Syrian-led and Syrian-owned political process.
The move comes ahead of President al-Sharar's meeting with US President Donald Trump at the White House next week. Washington had long pushed the 15-member council to ease restrictions on Syria following a major US policy shift announced in May. Syria's UN ambassador Ibrahim Olabi welcomed the council's decision.
The new Syria will be a success story. It will be a shining model that proves that the optimal path in international relations is positive engagement and constructive cooperation. If there are concerns, Syria is fully prepared to address them with sincere intent based on mutual respect.
As former President Bashar al-Assad was ousted last December, both domestic and some international observers describe Syria as entering a new era.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further is the regional political analyst, Lamis Jid. Lamis, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's start with looking at this UN vote then. It's a dramatic turn, isn't it? After years of stalemate, how significant is this moment, do you think, for Syria's reintegration into the international community?
Indeed, it's a big step for Syria, the new identity of Syria into the international community. There is no doubt that this is a step that the whole Syrian were hoping for since sanctions were applied against the country and the people of the country. And we hope that this step will bring more stability into Syria and more prosperity into the Syrian people.
And Washington's push to lift these sanctions, it's been described, hasn't it, as somewhat of a reset. What do you think the US hopes to achieve strategically going forward by recognising the al-Sharar government?
I think we need to have a little background about why sanctions were put in the first place. And I think those sanctions were put by the United States itself. And it was part of regime change plans that the US, as a dominant power in the world, using against governments when they do not apply into its agenda. So now America has a loyal government in Damascus, and they believe that there is no need to leave these sanctions in the state that it was during the war, the 14 years war in Syria. Of course, these sanctions will not come without price, and the price was not just how much the Syrian people suffered, but also the price will be with more presence, American presence in Syria. And as we all know also, when it comes to the talk with Israel or having a southern base in Damascus for the American presence in Syria. So we will see what will happen in the 10th of November when the president of the transitional government will visit the Oval Office. By the way, it's the same day of 250 years of the Marines in America that Mr. President al-Shara has himself was accused of killing many of the American Marines. And this is where all the paradox is happening. So it's indeed a very new era where all of us are astonished watching, but also full of hope that might bring more stability to the region.
China, of course, notably abstained. Just give us some more background on that abstention and perhaps how you think it might shape Beijing's future role in Syria.
There is no doubt that China might abstain, and it did this many times when it came to any decisions regarding Syria in the recent years, when it does not apply or comply completely with its agenda in the Middle East. As we know, China is a rival to the United States now, and it has another vision for how the world should be run. And Syria was the base of some kind of the non-obedience acts to the American policy in the world, that also part of it or from behind could be led by the China. So China today is hoping that this might maybe bring some of its vision to the Middle East, but I doubt. I think there is more American presence in the Middle East, and China still hoping for more maybe balanced world, if we could say the term, that is in term of emerging, and all of us are watching it.
Lamis, a lot of people were surprised by the warm endorsement from Russia. What's behind that? Is this about signalling some alignment with the US perhaps, or is it more a tactical move just to make sure they're not left out of influence in Syria going forward?
You know, in politics, there is nothing called complete alliance or complete enemies. There are some, each country will look for its national benefits, or will try to keep its power as long as it can. I think Syria would not have witnessed any of what happened in the last month since January if Russia was not engaged in a regional and international decision regarding Syria. So, of course, Russia might have some kind of deal with other regional powers. because Russia also is involved with the United States, not only in Syria, but also in Ukraine. This applies also the same rules between Turkey and Israel now. Also, they are the other main players in Syria. Now we have Russia that hopes to keep some kind of influence in the west of Syria, as much as the Turk and the Israeli are trying also to have the north controlled by the Turk and the south controlled by the Israeli. Still, the Russian hopes that they could have some bases on the Mediterranean, their usual bases in Tartus or Latakia. Of course, this will not go if the stability is not applied on the whole country. But the thing that the international powers or main players that are playing in Syria now, they will get nowhere with stability if the transitional government is not really supported by the Syrian people. For the time being, this government did not show any willing to work with all Syrians as equal, and I think this might really be the weak point in this government and its capacity to take Syria into new era. This meeting in the Oval Office, of course, it's a big step. It's very symbolic step for the Syrian today or for the future of Syria. But on daily life of Syrians or of the aspiration of Syrian people, I think this government needs to be more engaged in all Syrian equally, and having Syria for the Syrian at first place, I think.
And Lamis, finally, just on this incredibly important and symbolic meeting in the Oval Office, what should we be watching out for? What should we expect to happen? And how do you think this could reshape dynamics, particularly in the Middle East?
Let's speak about Syria first, because I think this meeting has a lot to do with Syria as an entity first, as a whole country as we knew it since the Second World War. I believe the president of Syria today, of the transitional government in Syria, he needs to think about independence. He needs to think about territory. He needs to think Syrians. He knows that he cannot stay for long if he's not supported by his regional allies or international allies. And this is why he might go for more compromise. But when it comes to Syrian territory, I think he needs to be very careful, because this is not only his decision alone. It's a decision of generation, where people had fought many wars and the Syrian paid so many lives. So we need to take in consideration also the sovereignty of the country and how the Syrian people really feel deep within. Do they want really to give Al-Golan, for example, Golan Heights? Is it now in a process of giving it away? The other base that might be close to Damascus, the sovereignty of the country, the unity of the country. I think this is what a transitional government needs to be asked today. It's not only to be laundering a government in front of the whole world. I think we need also to support the aspiration of the Syrian people for the future of their country.
Well, Lamis, the whole world will certainly be watching with great interest this important meeting. We thank you very much indeed for joining us with your analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, time for a short break now. Coming up next, Viktor Orban's high-stakes talks with Donald Trump in Washington. Do stay with us.
partnership with Azerbaijan will allow Israel also to enjoy some of the benefits.
What makes Azerbaijan a uniquely strategic partner for Israel?
Peace process with Armenia, which will bring more and more stability to both countries.
One of the key elements of that Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire agreement is delivery of the humanitarian aid to Gaza.
More and more humanitarian aid entering Gaza from various checkpoints. We cannot allow a terrorist organization to sit on our borders.
It's often said the world never sleeps, but who's ready to wake you up with all you need to know about what is happening across the globe and in the region?
We are. Daybreak is live every morning, bringing you a complete wrap-up of the stories from overnight, all the news already happening in the world.
The biggest global headlines, the key regional developments, the must-read stories shaping the day.
We show them, we discuss them, we guide you through their meaning. We give you the news and a first look at the key headlines.
I'm Nadia Jani.
And I'm Lou Brown.
Join us, it's Daybreak here at A News.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for A News.
Welcome back to Prime Time. Now, relations between Washington and Budapest are under the spotlight tonight as leaders from both sides meet against a backdrop of changing global alignments and renewed energy diplomacy. Well, the discussions come at a pivotal moment for Europe's political landscape, with both nations signalling a desire to redefine their partnership and strengthen their roles on the international stage.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban is in Washington for talks with US President Donald Trump. It will be the first bilateral encounter between the two leaders since Trump's return to the White House, and it comes at a time of growing friction between Hungary and its Western allies. At the top of the agenda is energy. Budapest is seeking exemption from US sanctions on Russian oil, arguing that cutting supplies would seriously endanger Hungary's energy security. Washington, meanwhile, wants European partners to fully enforce restrictions on Russian energy, viewing them as a key pressure tool against Moscow. Orban also intends to revive his proposal to host a Trump-Putin summit in Budapest, an idea that he believes could help open a path towards negotiations on Ukraine, but one that has raised concern among Kiev's allies. Analysts say the visit also serves Orban's political needs at home. With elections expected next spring, the Hungarian leader hopes to return with a symbolic victory, perhaps an endorsement, or even a future Trump visit that could strengthen his image as an influential statesman. Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó describes this as the golden age of US-Hungarian relations, pointing to months of work on a new economic and energy cooperation package.
Well, let's get more on this now from our Washington correspondent Jagruti Dave on what's happening in these discussions, including Viktor Orban's likely push for another Trump-Putin summit.
Well, Guy, Donald Trump considers Viktor Orban a friend, but despite that friendship, the US president says he still hasn't granted Hungary an exemption from the latest US sanctions on Russian oil, which Mr. Trump finally implemented in a bid to pressure Russia into making a peace deal with Ukraine. Now, Hungary is a big buyer of Russian oil, and Viktor Orban is a big defender of Russia's Vladimir Putin in the European Union. So Hungary is at risk of being slapped with sanctions itself if it flouts the US ban on purchasing oil from Russia's two largest oil companies. But on top of this, Hungary's capital, Budapest, was going to be the venue for a possible summit between Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin. Now, that meeting was shelved after Donald Trump became frustrated with the Russian leader's prevarication over ending the war in Ukraine. Viktor Orban hopes to start what he's called a new chapter in Hungarian-American relations with President Trump. But it's not clear whether this new chapter will include exemptions from sanctions for Hungary or another possible meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss this further is our correspondent, Katie Wilson. Katie, good to have you here. What's happening with this meeting then? Just run us through the basics. Who's confirmed? What's happening? What's on the record so far?
Yes, as you mentioned, President Trump will meet with the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban at the White House today. This is their first bilateral meeting since Trump returned to the White House in January. And the meeting's set to begin around 8:30 Baku time, so any minute now, but we know how White House timings are, so we'll keep you updated with that as soon as we know more, of course. But what we know so far about what lies ahead is that the two leaders are expected to discuss trade and energy, among other topics. And just some context about the relationship between these two leaders. Trump and Orban, they're traditionally allies. They see eye to eye on a lot of issues like immigration, like LGBTQ+ issues. And we know how much Trump loves these strong men leaders, and Orban's definitely one of those, and he's generally admired in MAGA circles as well.
So we can expect plenty of comments about how tough Mr. Orban is from Mr. Trump again, you think?
Definitely, but this meeting might not be as friendly as we're used to between these two, as the two leaders are at odds of an issue of critical importance, which is going to be central to this meeting, and that's the US pressure on Hungary and Slovakia to weaken themselves urgently off Russian oil. This is Trump's latest gambit in his efforts to pressurize advise Russia in ending its war on Ukraine. And ahead of this meeting, when asked whether Trump had gone too far in imposing sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil companies, Orban had said, from a Hungarian point of view, yes. So it is going to make for a trickier meeting this evening compared to what we're used to.
Has Mr. Orban got any leverage here? Do we expect him to try and sort of tackle this head on? And if so, is there any chance at all you think that he'd be successful?
So Hungary is seeking exemptions for these sanctions, and domestically the Hungarian narrative is that this meeting is tied to Orban achieving these exemptions. So I'm sure, as you remember, almost all EU countries have diversified their energy mix away from Russia since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. But Hungary's dependence has deepened, and they're almost totally reliant on Russia for its oil imports now. The Hungarian government's argument is that land-based pipelines are the cheapest way to receive oil, and since Hungary is landlocked, there's no sea coast of its own, it has no alternative. But as I said, this meeting is coming amid new US sanctions targeting two of Moscow's largest oil companies. They're set to go into effect on November 21st, and Trump has said that Orban wants an exemption from these sanctions. He told reporters on Air Force One, he's asked for an exemption, we haven't granted one, but he's asked. He's a friend of mine, he's asked for an exemption, but there's no indication that he's going to get that exemption just yet. The US NATO ambassador Matthew Whitaker told Fox News that Hungary needs to present a plan to reduce Russian oil imports, and the US is ready to assist Budapest. So this is quite a high-risk meeting for Orban, really, because as I said, this meeting has become quite tied to these exemptions in the Hungarian domestic narrative. But even if he doesn't get it, the Trump administration probably won't allow Orban to leave these negotiations looking any weaker, because make no mistake, Trump still wants Orban to be re-elected. So he's not going to do anything to damage that prospect.
And Mr. Orban has sort of more widely positioned Hungary as a potential peacemaker between Washington and Moscow. Has that formalised itself in any form yet? Is that in the statements? Do we expect that to become an official part of ongoing discussions?
Well, I'm sure you remember that news of a planned summit in Budapest between Trump and Putin broke out last month, and senior Hungarian officials had been hinting for months that they believed the war in Ukraine could be over by the end of the year, which sounded absurd until we heard about this summit. But these plans all unravelled on the 21st of October when the White House announced the summit had been called off. According to the Financial Times, Washington cancelled the summit after they concluded that Moscow was unwilling to negotiate on its territorial demands. But Orban had been working on these summit plans for months, and it's ahead of a crucial election in Hungary in the spring, and Orban had hoped that a Trump-Putin summit could shore up his support at home, because why would you vote against an internationally successful peacemaker? So in Rome last week, despite US dismissals, Orban had insisted the summit would still happen, and it was just a question of time. And at the weekend, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov had quietly suggested the same, but we're getting a different tone from Washington. But the Hungarian government still appears to be counting on that idea that Trump is bored by the war in Ukraine and wants to turn his back on it if no deal is done soon. But obviously the tone in Washington has shifted away from that recently.
And of course, energy, the war in Ukraine, two big aspects, but not the only things on the table for discussion.
That's right. The two leaders also plan to discuss ways of greater economic cooperation between the United States and Hungary. The White House has said the leaders would discuss areas of mutual interest and hinted that some deals could come out of this meeting. A White House official said the American people can expect more goods deals out of Prime Minister Orban's visit, spanning various industries. And there are signs of improved ties under the Trump administration. Last month, the US fully restored Hungary's status in its visa waiver program. And before the trip, Hungary's foreign minister said the US and Hungary has worked hard in the last weeks, preparing a large economic and energy cooperation package that would greatly contribute to guaranteeing Hungary's long-term energy security. So Hungary may offer trade and defence deals. One option could be to step up purchases of liquefied natural gas from the US in line with the EU, and that could diffuse some tensions there between the two sides. And Budapest and Washington, they've also been negotiating for years over the purchase of small nuclear reactors. And according to the Hungarian edition of Radio Free Europe, a defence deal is also on the cards. So there are plenty of avenues for the two countries to go at.
And Katie, as you say, the two men get on very well together, but how is all this going down back in Hungary with the public?
So as I mentioned, it's all about these elections which will be taking place in Hungary next April. And Orban has actually been using the country's heavy dependence on Russian oil and gas to advance his own agenda. He's used it as a weapon to attack Brussels, as a means to maintain his good relations with Moscow. And this is actually the platform that he's hoping to win re-election. He's promising cheap Russian energy to voters. And he's portraying himself as a safe pair of hands in an increasingly uncertain world. But if we look at the opinion polls, Orban is trailing. In the pro-European opposition leader Peter Magyar, he's on the rise. So Orban is going into this meeting hoping to persuade Trump to ease the pressure on Hungary, at least until this election. And Trump will be hoping Orban shows more willingness to wean itself off Russian oil supplies. But that might be tricky for Orban to explain to Hungarian voters, because he's been arguing for years that Hungary can't survive without Russian oil and gas. So he would lose face if it turns out that actually it can. But if we look at other countries like Czechia, so they have a similar population to Hungary, and they're also landlocked, and they've invested lots in completely weaning themselves off Russian oil. But despite Orban's warnings of price hikes, there's no data, at least so far, to suggest that Czech consumers are having to pay any more after weaning themselves off Russian oil.
Very interesting indeed. Katie, thank you as always for that analysis. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now, and then we'll be back with the top business news of the day. Do stay with us. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
What is power? Has leadership truly evolved, or are the old rules of geopolitics still pulling the strings behind the scenes? Who is really powerful? And what makes people feel powerless? Our new series explores the secrets, strategies, and consequences of power.
Partnership with Azerbaijan will allow Israel also to enjoy some of the benefits.
What makes Azerbaijan a uniquely strategic partner for Israel?
Peace process with Armenia, which will bring more and more stability to both countries.
One of the key elements of that Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire agreement is delivery of the humanitarian aid to Gaza.
More and more humanitarian aid entering Gaza from various checkpoints. We cannot allow a terrorist organization to sit on our borders.
Welcome back. Andy Mioch is here with the big business news stories of the day. Andy, what are you going to be looking at tonight?
Well, Guy, we'll be covering AI pushes and regulations, exports and tariffs, as well as some media and furniture industry news. So, first up, Tesla shareholders approved Elon Musk's record payout, as well as his plan to push the company further into AI and robotics. Musk said Tesla may build a large chip factory and partner with major players for autonomous vehicle chips.
The thing is that we actually have agreed to...
Tesla CEO Elon Musk scored a resounding victory Thursday as shareholders approved a pay package of as much as $878 billion over the next decade, endorsing his vision of morphing the EV maker into an AI and robotics juggernaut. Shares of Tesla rose about 2% in after-hours trading. Musk told shareholders Tesla will probably have to build a gigantic chip fab to make artificial intelligence chips, and publicly mused the EV maker could work with Intel. Tesla is designing its fifth-generation AI chip to power its autonomous ambitions, and Musk at the company's annual meeting laid out potential manufacturing plans. Struggling US chipmaker Intel has its own chip-making factories, but has lagged far behind NVIDIA in the AI chip race. The US government recently took a 10% stake in Intel, which needs to find an external customer for its newest manufacturing technology. Intel shares popped 4% in after-hours trading on Musk's remarks. Musk has teased the AI-5 chip before and reiterated that Tesla was also partnering with Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung.
It's a very difficult problem.
Speaking of AI, Dutch firm Nebius launched a new data center in London, powered by NVIDIA GPUs. Nebius had earlier secured a $17 billion GPU deal with Microsoft.
Nebius Group opened a new data center in London on Thursday. The Dutch firm, founded by former Yandex CEO Arkady Volozh and headquartered in Amsterdam, hopes to tap into the burgeoning need for infrastructure that underpins global AI ambitions. It had announced in September a deal with Microsoft for graphics processing unit infrastructure capacity worth $17.4 billion. Nebius's London facility is run on GPUs made by NVIDIA.
Moving on to global trade flows, China's exports fell 1.1% in October, with U.S. shipments dropping over 25%. Analysts see recent trade tensions and a high base last year affecting exports, but a trade truce may yet stabilize the outlook.
China's exports took an unexpected hit in October, falling 1.1% after months of front-loading to beat US tariffs. Customs data released Friday show it's the worst performance since February, reversing an 8.3% rise in September and missing a Reuters forecast for 3% growth. Analysts say the drop partly reflects last year's high base, when factories rushed shipments ahead of President Trump's return to the White House. Exports to the US plunged more than 25% year-on-year, while shipments to the European Union barely grew, up just 0.9%. Sales to Southeast Asia rose 11%. Tensions between China and the US spiked in early October after Trump threatened 100% tariffs on Chinese goods, a direct response to Beijing's expanded export controls on rare earth metals. The mood eased just last week when Trump met Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea, where both sides agreed to extend their trade truce for another year. Analysts expect the outlook to stabilize in the near term under the trade truce. But longer term, supply chains will keep shifting out of China as both countries try to rely less on each other.
Sticking with global trade, the U.S. Supreme Court is examining whether President Donald Trump's administration legally imposed tariffs under laws meant for emergencies. A ruling against the tariffs could force policy changes.
US President Donald Trump said he will consider alternatives if the Supreme Court rules against his administration over the legality of sweeping tariffs. Trump told reporters he could try other things, but they would be slow by comparison. The US Supreme Court justices raised doubts on Wednesday over the legality of Trump's sweeping tariffs in a case with implications for the global economy that marks a major test of Trump's powers. Conservative and liberal justices alike sharply questioned the lawyer representing Trump's administration about whether a 1977 law meant for use during national emergencies gave Trump the power he claimed to impose tariffs, or whether the Republican president had intruded on the powers of Congress.
Anywhere in the world, that's the price we're going.
To the UK media landscape now. ITV's shares surged after it confirmed talks to sell its media division to rival Sky for around £1.6 billion amid declining ad revenues.
Shares in ITV have jumped by 18% at the start of trading in London on Friday, after it confirmed it is in talks about the possible sale of its media and entertainment operations to rival Sky. ITV confirmed the speculations it is in discussions to sell its M&E business to Sky for an enterprise value of £1.6 billion. The statement came hours after reports that Comcast, the parent company of Sky, was in talks to buy ITV's broadcasting business, a move that would upend the British television landscape. News of the possible deal came shortly after ITV said it expected advertising revenues, which still account for most of its income, to fall by 9% in the key fourth quarter advertising period in the run-up to Christmas.
Reports are coming in that the EU is exploring a pause on parts of its AI legislation amid lobbying from US tech giants and calls for regulatory flexibility to support innovation.
The European Commission could pause parts of its landmark AI legislation. That's according to Britain's Financial Times on Friday. It cited intense pressure from big tech companies and the US government. The move follows months of urging by tech giants like Meta and Alphabet and pressure from the Trump administration. Washington has warned against measures that could provoke trade tensions. A senior EU official reportedly told the Financial Times the EU was engaging with the Trump administration on adjustments to the AI Act and other digital regulation as part of what they called a wider simplification process. A European Commission spokesperson had earlier dismissed calls in July from some companies and countries to pause parts of the legislation.
And finally, in furniture news, IKEA reported a 26% fall in operating profit for the year, driven by rising costs from US tariffs. Despite price cuts and lower sales, wholesale volume increased as shoppers took advantage of discounts.
Sweden's IKEA, which supplies furniture to IKEA stores around the world, said on Friday its annual operating profit dropped 26% as the impacts of US tariffs drove up costs. The IKEA brand owner said operating profit for the financial year that ended August 31st was 1.7 billion euros, down from 2.3 billion euros the year before. IKEA said in a statement that commodity prices and logistics costs had risen in the second half of the financial year due to uncertainties following US tariff announcements. Overall sales from IKEA stores across 63 markets around the world fell for a second year in a row to 44.6 billion euros, as the budget furniture retailer continued a push to slash prices and lure back shoppers. While IKEA has cut prices overall, higher US tariffs have forced it to increase prices on some products in the United States, which it imports from factories in Europe and China. IKEA said wholesale sales volumes rose by around 6% compared to the previous year as shoppers responded to lower prices by buying more.
Well, that's all we had in Friday's business brief. Quite a week, Guy.
Yeah, a lot in there as always, Andy. Thank you very much indeed. Very interesting stuff. We'll take a short break now, but coming up next, Donald Trump unveils a new deal as Kazakhstan joins the Abraham Accords, expanding ties with Israel and the wider Arab world. Do stay with us.
It's often said the world never sleeps, but who's ready to wake you up with all you need to know about what is happening across the globe and in the region?
We are. Daybreak is live every morning, bringing you a complete wrap-up of the stories from overnight with all the news already happening in the world.
The biggest global headlines, the key regional developments, the must-read stories shaping the day.
We show them, we discuss them, we guide you through their meaning. We give you the news and a first look at the key headlines.
I'm Nadia Jani.
And I'm Lou Brown.
Join us, it's Daybreak here at A News.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Partnership with Azerbaijan will allow Israel also to enjoy some of the benefits.
What makes Azerbaijan a uniquely strategic partner for Israel?
Peace process with Armenia, which will bring more and more stability to both countries.
One of the key elements of that Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire agreement is delivery of the humanitarian aid to Gaza.
More and more humanitarian aid entering Gaza from various checkpoints. We cannot allow a terrorist organization to sit on our borders.
Welcome back to Primetime. It's good to have you with us. President Donald Trump has announced a new diplomatic breakthrough. Kazakhstan is joining the Abraham Accords, the US-led initiative aimed at deepening ties between Israel and the Arab world. Ubay Sharbanda picked up the story.
Trump confirmed on Truth Social on Thursday evening that he arranged a phone call between Kazakhstan's Tokayev and Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu, officially announcing Kazakhstan joining the Abraham Accords. Tokayev said that he wanted to upgrade his country's existing relations with Israel to benefit from further regional cooperation and integration, and to send a signal of religious tolerance and the importance of dialogue. The Trump administration hopes that the announcement by Kazakhstan on the Abraham Accords will encourage other Muslim-majority countries to join in normalizing and expanding relations with the State of Israel.
Kazakhstan becomes the first country to join the US-brokered Abraham Accords under Trump's second presidency. The accords were created to establish and advance diplomatic ties, economic cooperation, and regional partnerships between Israel and Arab and Muslim majority nations. The framework focuses on areas such as trade, security, technology, education, and intergovernmental collaboration. Kazakhstan and Israel already established diplomatic ties in 1992 and currently maintain cooperation in trade, technology, energy, and security. The formal accession adds Kazakhstan to a framework that also includes the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, and Sudan. The development reflects ongoing US efforts to expand participation in the accords beyond the Middle East, linking Central Asia to wider regional diplomacy. A formal signing ceremony is expected in Washington in the coming weeks.
Well, joining me now to discuss this further is Professor Nurbulat Naishanbayev, a professor at Turan University in Almaty, Kazakhstan. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Prime Time. How is this decision going down in Kazakhstan then to join the Abraham Accords? Is this something that's being received as a fantastic geopolitical milestone or something that's a bit more like a gamble?
Definitely. In media, also within the expert community, it had been discussed in the last few months within the expert communities, but the latest news, Kazakhstan joining Abraham Accords, I think it's becoming accepted as a symbolic switch in the foreign policy of Kazakhstan regarding the Middle Eastern policies, because we have already mentioned it that Kazakhstan and Israel had been successfully established the relations since 1992. So therefore, this step, it shows Kazakhstan is trying to be active in the foreign policy of United States in the Middle East. So I think for the long term, so American foreign policy in Middle East and Central Asia will become overlap at some point.
And Professor, what do you expect that impact to be? I mean, closer cooperation with Israel, also with the other signatories. Do you expect to see tangible economic strategic gains as a result for Kazakhstan?
I don't expect very strong, tangible changes on the foreign policy of Kazakhstan or between the relations Israel and Kazakhstan, because Kazakhstan had launched its so-called multi-vector foreign policy. We should accept this step as a one-step, Middle Eastern step of their foreign policies, new vectors. So therefore, for the long term, strategically, those vectors will be play as a deterrent factor in Central Asia. But anyhow, regarding the Israel-Palestinian conflict, Kazakhstan also offered a two-state solution and supported solving these issues within the prism of United Nations agenda. So therefore, these steps, joining Kazakhstan Abraham Accords, first nation from Central Asia, I think it will lead other nations too from our region and the neighbor regions in the upcoming future. But I don't see any straight changes regarding the economic or financial policies between Kazakhstan and Israel, because we have already established structural, mutual beneficial relations with Israel and Kazakhstan. Both nations, they have embassies in the capitals, and subsequent business relations.
Yes, as you say, Kazakhstan has been described as taking traditionally quite a balanced approach to foreign policy. Nevertheless, there is now this link that Washington has described as the link between Central Asia, Middle Eastern diplomacy, and now, of course, with Washington. Do you think gradually over time that may influence and develop new foreign policy strategies for Kazakhstan?
I don't think so. First of all, it will lead to the new recreation of the foreign policy, but it will become as a continuation or redevelopment of the foreign policy strategy of the not only Kazakhstan but Central Asian countries. Surely we have witnessed it in the last 3 years in Central Asia, the rule of the game. So big players are changing. Now we see a rise of the economic interest of China, also the rise of influence of Russia as well. So in this regard, I think Kazakhstan is trying to find a balance between them, joining Abraham Accords, at least to create multilateral relations, not only with China, Russia, but bringing to the region Israel as well as United States. So therefore, it is pretty pragmatic steps from the aspect of foreign policy of Kazakhstan, I think.
Yeah, pragmatic, delicate balance, isn't it? And you mentioned China there. Obviously, Russia, Iran, two highly interested actors also in this. Are there any concerns in Astana, in Almaty, about how this move might affect relations in Moscow and Tehran?
Definitely, those two nations, Moscow and Tehran, are one of the pretty concerned nations regarding the Kazakhstan steps. Before this decision, Kazakhstan also showed openly the neutrality, for example, regarding the Ukraine and Russian conflict, several times concerned its neutrality. Also regarding Iran, we have had several open visions. So therefore, I think it's pretty natural to wait from them some sort of informational aspects. But for the long term, I think it will create new platform. It will create a new rule of the game in Central Asia. Step by step, it will become a normal practice of the foreign policy, not only of Kazakhstan, but other Central Asian nations too, in order to avoid any upcoming security traps.
And finally, Professor, other Central Asian nations obviously will be watching, waiting, may have an interest in following suit. Do you expect this to encourage, influence other nations in the region to possibly join the Accords?
Sure. If we analyze, again, in the last few years, how Central Asian nations responded to the ongoing conflicts in Middle East, or during the first term of the Trump presidency in 2020, when President Trump declared Abraham Accord, also a few weeks ago in Egypt, when they made a Gaza peace plan, we have seen some overlappings of the foreign policy of Central Asian states, in particular Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, because in Uzbekistan they have also embassies of Israel, they have also established strong ties with Israel in the last 3 decades. So my expectation is, after the official agreement, signing ceremonies in a few weeks with Kazakhstan and the United States on Abraham Accords, the next candidate probably will be Uzbekistan from our region. Then it may include Kyrgyzstan as well for the long term. But still, I don't see any possibilities joining Tajikistan to this, as far as the close relations of Iran and the geographical location in general.
Professor, thank you very much indeed. It's a very, very interesting topic, one that we'll follow closely, I'm sure. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. Coming up, more international news.
What is power? Has leadership truly evolved, or are the old rules of geopolitics still pulling the strings behind the scenes? Who is really powerful? And what makes people feel powerless? Our new series explores the secrets, strategies, and consequences of power.
It's often said the world never sleeps, but who's ready to wake you up with all you need to know about what is happening across the globe and in the region?
We are. Daybreak is live every morning, bringing you a complete wrap-up of the stories from overnight and all the news already happening in the world.
The biggest global headlines, the key regional developments, the must-read stories shaping the day.
We show them, we discuss them, we guide you through their meaning. We give you the news and a first look at the key headlines.
I'm Nadia Jani.
And I'm Lou Brown.
Join us, it's Daybreak here at A News.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabana. Hi, Candy. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro,
Beijing,
Bangkok,
Tbilisi,
Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan,
Tehran,
Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back to PrimeTime. Let's take a look now at other stories from around the world. Israel's military has launched a series of airstrikes in Lebanon despite an active ceasefire, killing one person. The strikes come as Israel accuses Hezbollah of refusing to disarm and build its military capabilities. Lebanon's president, Joseph Aoun, claimed the strikes had violated international humanitarian law by targeting civilians and forcing them to flee their homes. He denounced the action as a fully fledged crime. Well, let's take a look.
At least one person has been killed and 9 others injured after a series of Israeli strikes hit southern Lebanon on Thursday. Israel said the orders and strikes were carried out because Hezbollah was attempting to rebuild its military capabilities in the region. Officials have voiced concern over rising tensions.
After the enemy failed to achieve its objectives, I saw that today it has gone back to hitting civilians' homes. This is the responsibility of the Lebanese state, the Prime Minister and the President to address. We are in a very dangerous situation. If things are heading this way and continue like this, then all hope is lost. No one knows where the consequences of these matters will lead.
The strikes come despite a ceasefire deal agreed a year ago, intended to end more than a year of fighting between Israel and Hezbollah. Israel had issued evacuation orders an hour before the airstrike, and Lebanon's civil defense assisted residents in leaving the area. However, the strikes have had a significant impact on local communities.
This shop was supporting 5 to 6 households, overall 5 to 6 homes. My neighbor, with his own shop, was supporting 4 to 5 homes. He's a blacksmith. They hit all of us. Our houses are gone, no problem. We said, at least the shop is left, it can make up for some of it. Now the shop is gone. We're at zero, below zero.
Israel has accused Hezbollah of failing to disarm under the ceasefire agreement and says it will continue to defend its borders while insisting on full enforcement. The Lebanese government and Hezbollah have condemned the strikes, with the Iran-backed group saying it remains committed to the ceasefire but maintains what it describes as a legitimate right to resist Israel.
Today marks the 76th anniversary of Oil Rocks, the world's first offshore oil platform built near Baku. Established in 1949, it continues to operate today. Let's take a look.
This is Oil Rocks, a marvel of human ingenuity and a symbol of Azerbaijan's oil heritage.
Where the history meets with the innovation and the economic pulse of a nation beats with the world's energy needs.
Oil Rocks is a true city built in the heart of the Caspian Sea. Approximately 110 kilometers from shore, this extraordinary project rose in record time, featuring expansive offshore operations powered by cutting-edge technology. Today, it continues to contribute to Azerbaijan's economy, with around 30 million tons of extractable reserves remaining. About 2,000 workers live and operate here, ensuring its ongoing productivity. At its peak, Oil Rocks comprise nearly 2,000 wells and 320 production sites, connected by over 100 miles of bridges and 60 miles of oil and gas pipelines. This offshore city, Oil Rocks, is not just an industrial marvel, but a story of human ambition, perseverance, and the quest to harness nature's resources in one of the most challenging environments. The engineers, technicians, and support staff who live and work here for weeks at a time continue to innovate, ensuring the station's legacy endures. Moreover, the exploration and operational activities at Oil Rocks contributed to the creation of an entire school dedicated to training scientific professionals. While Oil Rocks epitomizes offshore ingenuity, the Sangachal terminal stands as a testament to Azerbaijan's capacity to harness and deliver its energy resources to the world.
Sangachal terminal is one of the world's biggest oil and gas terminals, which also plays a crucial role by processing and transporting oil and gas from oil rigs and other terminals from the Caspian Sea, and not only fueling the country's economy, but also strengthens its position in the global energy map. And from here, resources are distributed to international markets and underlining its importance in connecting Azerbaijan to the world.
From the steel foundations of Oil Rocks to the expansive Sangachal terminal on shore, Azerbaijan's energy infrastructure tells a remarkable story of interconnected innovation. As the country transitions into a new era of energy production and sustainability, these landmarks remain steadfast symbols of ingenuity and ambition, defining Azerbaijan's legacy in the global energy arena and blending industrial heritage with the green agenda.
President Shavkat Mirziyoyev's visit to Washington for the C5+1 summit has led to major agreements with the United States across investment, technology and trade. The deals mark a new stage in bilateral cooperation between Tashkent and Washington. Our Civil Rajapova has more now from Uzbekistan.
On the sidelines of the C5+1 summit, President Shavkat Mirziyoyev met with United States President Donald Trump to discuss expanding strategic and economic partnership. Trump announced on his social media that Uzbekistan plans to invest over $100 billion in the United States over the next decade, including $35 billion within the next 3 years. The two sides agreed to deepen cooperation in energy, transport, agriculture and IT with support from the United States Export-Import Bank and the International Development Finance Corporation. In the technology sector, several American IT and logistics firms will open offices in Uzbekistan's IT park, creating hundreds of jobs and training opportunities. Washington also expressed readiness to repeal the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, lifting long-standing trade restrictions. Uzbekistan in turn plans to introduce visa-free travel for United States citizens from 2026 and has proposed 10-year multiple entry visas for its nationals. The visit also brought progress in industrial cooperation with General Motors and joint projects on critical minerals. Officials say these agreements elevate relations to a strategic level, signaling growing trust and long-term investment between the two countries. It is Civil Rajapova reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. We'll be back in just a few minutes' time. Do stay with us. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Partnership with Azerbaijan will allow Israel also to enjoy some of the benefits.
What makes Azerbaijan a uniquely strategic partner for Israel?
Peace process with Armenia, which will bring more and more stability to both countries.
One of the key elements of that Donald Trump's Gaza ceasefire agreement is delivery of the humanitarian aid to Gaza.
More and more humanitarian aid entering Gaza from various checkpoints. We cannot allow a terrorist organization to sit on our borders.
What is power? Has leadership truly evolved, or are the old rules of geopolitics still pulling the strings behind the scenes? Who is really powerful? And what makes people feel powerless? Our new series explores the secrets, strategies, and consequences of power.
Welcome back to PrimeTime. Washington's expanding campaign at sea is drawing growing scrutiny, with another US operation in the Caribbean reigniting debate over legality and accountability. The Pentagon insists the missions target terror-linked smuggling networks, but international observers and the UN say the tactics risk crossing clear legal boundaries. Let's take a look.
3 people have been killed after a US military strike on a suspected drug vessel in international waters in the Caribbean on Thursday. The action marks the latest in more than a dozen US strikes carried out since September on vessels near the Venezuelan coast and, more recently, in the eastern Pacific Ocean. US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced the strike in a social media post, claiming the vessel was operated by a designated terrorist organization, though he offered no further evidence. President Donald Trump has defended the attacks as a necessary escalation to curb the flow of drugs into the United States, insisting the country is engaged in an armed conflict with drug cartels. The United Nations has previously condemned the strikes on alleged drug traffickers off the South American coast as unacceptable and a violation of international human rights law, while Venezuela has said they infringe on its sovereignty. To date, the US military has killed 70 people in 17 strikes, according to reports.
Well, joining me now to talk about this is Mark Merowitz, a professor at State University of New York Maritime College. Professor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Congressional approval in place, but legal boundaries still apply, don't they? What are the constraints that the US must operate within?
Well, let me clarify. The Senate had a resolution to actually stop the president from doing this, and that resolution was turned down. In terms of authorization, the Trump administration has been very careful to request, or at least to give an order, to attack the drug boats, or the boats that it alleges are involved in the drug trade, but has not sought to authorize attacks into the land targets inside Venezuela. So they are trying to follow a fairly fine line here. The question of authorization, does the president have authority? The president has authority as commander-in-chief. But the members of Congress are saying, well, you need to come to Congress. So this is an age-old dispute between the branches of the presidency and the Congress as to who has authority to launch hostilities just like the ones that we're seeing here.
And of course, the Pentagon maintains that the targeted vessels were definitely operated by terrorist-linked groups. What sort of evidence is presented to prove that? Is it possible to present evidence of certainty of that fact?
Look, the president is commander-in-chief. When Obama ordered the attack on Osama bin Laden, or Trump ordered the attack on the Iranian naval nuclear facilities, he didn't need to ask anyone. That's how the system works here. And in fact, we had a war powers resolution way back in the 1970s, where President Nixon was going to be restricted. And the resolution said the president has to come back to Congress within a certain number of days in order to launch hostilities and get permission. No president, Democrat or Republican, has ever sought the approval of Congress. I repeat that, no president has ever sought the approval of Congress. It is a murky issue in our political system, and I don't think any different standard applies here. As far as evidence is concerned, there would have to be evidence sufficient for the commander-in-chief to issue the order. And I am certainly not privy to that evidence, but at least that seems to be the case.
Indeed, Professor, but there have been some concerns raised, though, haven't there, about possible human rights violations, including from the UN. What's been the reaction there?
Well, let me put it this way. The UN has never been a neutral or unbiased party with respect to the United States or many other issues. So I don't take that, honestly, very seriously. But I think that the issue is presented before the American people, and the issue is presented in terms of Venezuela, which is a failed state in which they have elections, and then the person who wins the election has to flee for her life because Mr. Maduro decided he wants to continue in power. And that's not the first time that happened in Venezuela. The question is, and this is brought up in a very interesting editorial in the Wall Street Journal, where they are saying that there has to be some care here in watching this issue, because what you don't want, says the Wall Street Journal, is for the United States to end up in another situation like John F. Kennedy with the Bay of Pigs in Cuba, which was an invasion of Cuba, which failed, which caused also a lot of loss of life. So yes, certainly there has to be a balancing here in terms of legitimate targets and human rights and people who are innocent civilians. And I do trust the American military to do that.
Another piece of balancing, if you like, that is being discussed at the moment is this balance of power between the executive and legislative branches of government. This happens a lot, doesn't it, when there are contentious foreign policy situations that occur. Although with President Trump, it has been a criticism that's echoed quite considerably recently. Where does Washington feel it is in terms of that balance being in the right sort of shape?
This is a historical issue. This goes back all the way in our history. We've had presidents who wanted to do certain things, FDR with Lend-Lease, with World War II, Wilson, World War I, Obama, Nixon with the Vietnam War. We've had it on and on and on. The clash or conflict or disagreement between the legislature, which says, the Constitution says that Congress has the power to declare war, Mr. President. And the president says, I'm the commander-in-chief, and I get to decide when there are going to be actions taken by the military, by the Pentagon, as you said. So I think this is a confusing provision, but maybe the founding fathers put it in that way deliberately to create this kind of ambiguity. We don't know the answer to it, but as I said before, no president, Democrat or Republican, has ever agreed to be subject to the War Powers Resolution, which says that, and in fact, Congress passed it, which says, President, you've got to come to Congress after you launch hostilities within 60 days and get permission to continue. No president has ever come to Congress. So it is an unresolved issue in our political system. I dare say it won't be resolved. And I don't think Trump, in terms of this issue, is perhaps any different than Presidents Obama, Nixon, Bush. We've had all these many, many conflicts. And honestly, over all the history of the United States, only 5 major battles, wars, have been authorized and declared by Congress. World War I, World War II, right? The War of 1812, the Spanish-American War, and the Mexican-American War. Not Vietnam, not Korea, not the issues with Iran. None of that was ever declared by Congress. So Congress is trying to assert its muscle assert its influence, which it should do. Again, the Wall Street Journal's point, please be careful not to let this go too far. And that is exactly what our entire government should be doing.
It's very interesting, President. I mean, I suppose one element is the president's right, if you like, to take action if he feels that is necessary. Possibly a slightly separate issue might be whether this action is consistent with previous campaign messages that he's put forward. I mean, he was long seen as the non-interventionist president, critical of previous presidents that had gone around the world to police foreign states and situations. Is there any danger in these recent interventions that he might be upsetting his core supporters? He might be contradicting that previous sort of ideological position that he once took?
That's a very important question, and one that obviously is a dispute or a question between intervention and isolation. But the truth of the matter is, in our history, we had a Monroe Doctrine, which basically said, keep out of Latin America, European powers. And then we had Teddy Roosevelt's corollary, which said, if we don't like things that are going on in Latin America, in the continent, we're going to go intervene. And actually, the Wall Street Journal had to quote that again and again. They came up with a new idea called the Donroe Doctrine, D-O-N-R-E-R-O-E, right, of Donald Trump's doctrine of going and intervening in Latin America when he decides that it is necessary to do so. So the point you raise is really important, because if this is going to be the, so to speak, strategy of the Trump administration, then that question is, what about his supporters, his campaign, which was basically America first, and we're not going to get involved, and certainly his policy on Ukraine, we're not getting involved with troops on the ground, and we're not doing all these things, and we're America first. So you're absolutely right. This creates a big question mark. But the bottom line is, if you had to go to Congress every single time that the United States had to enter a military issue, and particularly something like Osama bin Laden, the Soleimani, and all of these, it isn't feasible to go to Congress and start having debates which are broadcast on A News or on C-SPAN, and let's see what Congress is saying about, doing this attack. It isn't practicable, and it isn't realistic to do it. So, yes, the president should consult with Congress. The president should work with Congress. But in times of emergency, it doesn't always work. Question is the situation in Venezuela an emergency? We don't know that. We don't have the details of it. We have to rely on what the president is telling us or what the Pentagon is telling us. And as I said before, I mean, I do trust our military and our Pentagon to tell us what's going on. And Venezuela is a problematic state. And the people in Venezuela live in a dictatorial and authoritarian regime in which is buttressed by China, Iran, Russia, and North Korea, and all sorts of other parties who, frankly, I never understood what are they doing there in Venezuela. So there's a bigger issue here that is really brewing under the surface. It's not the drug cartels, yes, but there's more to it. And the question is how much more, and how much more should the United States be involved? And that's a serious, complicated political question for which I don't think I have an immediate answer.
Bigger issues brewing under the surface. Very interesting indeed. Professor, thank you very much for joining us from New York.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll be taking a look at the top trending videos across social media. Do stay with us.
said, the world never sleeps, but who's ready to wake you up with all you need to know about what is happening across the globe and in the region?
We are. Daybreak is live every morning, bringing you a complete wrap-up of the stories from overnight, all the news already happening in the world.
The biggest global headlines, the key regional developments, the must-read stories shaping the day.
We show them, we discuss them, we guide you through their meaning. We give you the news and a first look at the key headlines.
I'm Nadia Jani.
And I'm Lou Brown.
Join us, it's Daybreak here at A News.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jeddah. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories. Welcome to Gabala.
I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro,
Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Portugal, Tehran, Islamabad,
Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Now, to dive into the world of social media, AIM users Guli Garadagli is with us. Guli, and what's on the agenda today?
Lots is happening in the world today. Peace talks, climate speeches, drone chaos, and even camels adapting to change. Quite a lineup, so let's jump in. Talks of an international peace force in Gaza appear to be moving forward. The US president says deployment could happen very soon and insists the agreement is strong, not tentative.
Do you have an update on how soon that international stability force may be on the ground in Gaza?
Very soon. It's going to be very soon. And Gaza is working out very well. And you haven't been hearing too much about problems. And I'll tell you, we've had countries that have volunteered. If there's a problem with Hamas, as an example, or a problem with anything, but they volunteered to, on a single basis, go in and take care of it. We have very powerful countries in this coalition. And it's not, this is because I've heard some of the press saying, well, it's a very tentative, or it's not tentative. This is a very strong peace. This is peace in the Middle East. Hamas is a very small part of it, very, very small part. And if they don't do as they said, if they don't behave, then they've got themselves a big problem, a really big problem like they've never had. But so far, it seems to be working out very well. But that's a very small part of what we're talking about. That's a part of Gaza.
While peace talks continue abroad, air travel across Europe's been anything but peaceful lately. Imagine your flight being canceled because of a drone. That's exactly what travelers in Belgium and Sweden are dealing with, as a wave of mysterious drone sightings continues to disrupt airports across Europe. Here's more.
A surge in drone activity across Europe is continuing to disrupt air travel. In Brussels, Zaventem Airport was forced to shut for about an hour on Thursday after another drone sighting, the third closure in a week, as Belgium grapples with a wave of unexplained incidents in its airspace. Thursday's shutdown was the latest in a series of interruptions after Zaventem halted operations twice on Tuesday. The airport has now been reopened. Officials say Belgium is working to strengthen surveillance of its airspace, with a national air security centre expected to be operational by January next year.
Should we just allow hostile drones flying over our territory and above military quarters? No, the directive is very clear. If possible, we bring them down and try to jam them. But that must be done safely. And in that sense, we stand by that. We're actively working on the file. The decision tomorrow is very important. The decision regarding the radar system is also very important because we need to be able to observe the airspace better, and that still requires some time.
Meanwhile, in Sweden, police are investigating after reports of drones near Gothenburg's Landvetter airport forced the suspension of all air traffic on Thursday night. Several arriving flights were diverted to other airports, including Copenhagen, while departures were postponed or cancelled.
Speaking of unexpected disruptions, things took an unexpected turn in the White House. Here's what happened. There was a brief pause during a White House event on Thursday, a bit of a scare that caught everyone's attention for a moment, but things were quickly back on track. Let's see.
For nearly 150 years, my company, Eli Lilly, has been investing in America. We've been advancing science and creating high-value jobs. But today, oh, are you okay? Gordon, you okay? Gordon, you okay? Yeah.
Shifting gears from Washington, let's talk about a powerful message from Kenya's president on climate change. Kenya's president made a really powerful point about climate change, that helping farmers transition isn't charity, it's a global responsibility. He also praised China for reforesting millions of hectares. Here's what he said.
We are asking farmers to make a transition for a global public good, and therefore the financing of the transition and how they farm ought to come from global financing and not from the farmers' balance sheets themselves.
His Excellency, the Governor General. I want to thank Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the Chinese government. They have reforested. They have the leading nation now in as far as reforestation is concerned. Over 96 million hectares of land have been reforested by the Chinese government.
Financing climate action is not charity. It is compensation for nature's services. It's a matter of global responsibility for humanity's survival.
On the topic of global responsibility, Prince William shared some urgent words on climate change. In a heartfelt speech at COP30, Prince William reminded us of the critical tipping points we're facing with climate change. His words highlighted just how important it is for leaders to act now. Take a look.
We come together today, here in the heart of the Amazon, at a pivotal moment in human history. A moment that demands courage, cooperation and unwavering commitment to our planet's future. A future that belongs not to us, but to our children and grandchildren. I want to first express my profound gratitude to Brazil for welcoming us all to Belém. All of us here today understand that we are edging dangerously close to the Earth's critical tipping points, thresholds beyond which the natural systems we depend on may begin to unravel. The melting of polar ice, the loss of the Amazon, the disruption of ocean currents. These are not distant threats. They are fast approaching and will affect every one of us, no matter where we live. Let us build a future where nature is valued and where every child inherits a world of prosperity, not peril. Let us rise to this moment with the clarity that history demands of us. Let us be the generation that turns the tide, not for applause, but for the quiet gratitude of those yet to be born. This here at COP30 is our moment. Let us not waste it. Our children and grandchildren are watching and hoping. Obrigado.
Now, imagine walking by Amsterdam's canals at dawn and spotting a red statue clinging to a wall. French artist James Colomina has been turning heads this week with powerful installations that call attention to climate change. Let's take a look.
Well, I actually think it's very creative. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's nice to see this sort of stuff when you're traveling.
I think it has something radical, so it's somehow, it's about revolution. That's my association with it. And yeah, I think it has also to do with the warming of the earth, of the water, the water that is rising.
I think what it also shows is that Amsterdam has a sort of liberal attitude to, regardless of how you feel about something, you're allowed to do it. You're allowed to be it. You're allowed to be in the minority of a small group of people who have a particular philosophy.
Back to more local developments. The Zangezur's project is expected to wrap up in 2026. Let's see how it's coming along. So this next story is really interesting. In Somalia, camel farmers are completely changing the way they work because of climate change. Instead of roaming free, the camels are now kept in pens, and it's actually helping the farmers survive. Let's check it out.
The severe shortage of pasture leaves no place for camels to graze, and we can't provide them with any grazing land. During drought seasons, the scarcity of water and lack of pasture significantly compromise their usefulness, as camels face severe water shortages and animal food.
We sell different price for the milk of the camels in the pen, and we sell $2 per litre. That is the price we give to the restaurant. The restaurant incurs much expense, like transportation. They are taxed, they pass checkpoints. So a litre is about $2.50 or $3 per litre.
A kilo of camel meat is $6, but in the past it was $2.5 or $3 a kilo. The price has gone up because of the droughts in the country.
Thanks for watching the social media segment. Don't forget to check our website at anews.tv. And of course, don't forget to check us on all of the social media platforms. Back to you, Guy.
From COP to camels, a fascinating selection as always. Guli, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Brussels Airport has reopened after its third shutdown this week, triggered by reported drone sightings. The disruption comes amid claims of Russian hybrid warfare, allegations Moscow denies.
A surge in drone activity across Europe is continuing to disrupt air travel. In Brussels, Zaventem Airport was forced to shut for about an hour on Thursday after another drone sighting, the third closure in a week, as Belgium grapples with a wave of unexplained incidents in its airspace. Thursday's shutdown was the latest in a series of interruptions after Zaventem halted operations twice on Tuesday. The airport has now been reopened. Officials say Belgium is working to strengthen surveillance of its airspace, with a national air security centre expected to be operational by January next year.
Should we just allow hostile drones flying over our territory and above military quarters? No, the directive is very clear. If possible, we bring them down and try to jam them. But that must be done safely. And in that sense, we stand by that. We're actively working on the file. The decision tomorrow is very important. The decision regarding the radar system is also very important because we need to be able to observe the airspace better, and that still requires some time.
Meanwhile, in Sweden, police are investigating after reports of drones near Gothenburg's Landvetter airport forced the suspension of all air traffic on Thursday night. Several arriving flights were diverted to other airports, including Copenhagen, while departures were postponed or cancelled.
Well, as we heard from Guli, the Zangezur corridor is no longer an idea. It's becoming reality, forged in steel and asphalt. On a broader scale, it fits into the vision of the Trump route, the India, Middle East and Europe economic corridor connecting Asia to Europe. Together, they put the South Caucasus region firmly on the global trading grid. Our Aitan Shukarova reports now.
When speaking of the South Caucasus, it is not only political dimensions that come to mind, but also economic aspirations, ongoing development projects, and the strategic goals set for the region's future. Naturally, these dynamics are reshaping the landscape of regional integration. At the heart of this transformation lies the Zangezur corridor, not merely a route, but a symbolic axis connecting economies, communities and historical geography. A project born out of a new reality, it's now redefining the future of the region through its ongoing transformation. On the Azerbaijani side, construction and infrastructure development are progressing non-stop with notable intensity. The priority has been the railway infrastructure. Since work commenced in 2021, nearly 90% has already been completed.
We are now at the Zengilan, the 67th kilometer of Hakkari railway station, and one of the stations along the Horadiz-Ağband line. In the future, the silence of these restored lands will be broken by the rhythmic sound of trains gliding over steel rails.
Horadiz-Ağband dəmiryol xəttinin ox üzrə uzunluğu 110,4 km.
The Horadiz-Ağband railway line is 110.4 kilometers long, and with sidings included, it reaches 140.6 kilometers. The project involves the construction of 9 stations, 40 bridges, 22 road crossings, 4 tunnels, 3 galleries, and nearly 600 engineering structures in total. The construction work is divided into 3 phases. The first phase covers the section between Horadiz, Yukarı Marjanli, Shukurbayli, and Sultanli residential areas. Most of the work under this phase has been completed, and freight transportation to the Araz industrial zone has already begun. The second phase is also nearing completion. As for the third phase, earthworks and engineering structures, including the construction of 3 tunnels and 2 galleries, are progressing rapidly. 71% of the tunnel works have already been completed.
The Horadiz-Agband railway project can also be regarded as a landmark achievement. This route is home to the longest railway tunnels ever constructed in Azerbaijan, all built using closed construction techniques. These tunnels will traverse the country's mountainous terrain and significantly enhance the efficiency and operational capacity of the railway line. Being of strategic importance, the 123-kilometer-long Horadiz-Zangilan-Jabrail highway, one of the projects that will bring new contributions to the region, is already 95% complete.
Among the most complex components of the project are now largely completed and represent a key section of the Zangezur corridor. These structures are set to play a pivotal role in establishing new economic, transport and communication links across the region.
The construction plan for the highway includes 8 junctions, 44 underpasses, 5 overpasses, 314 culverts of various diameters, and 24 bridges. The construction of 23 bridges has already been completed, while work on 1 bridge is still ongoing. 3 tunnels with a total length of 12 kilometers have been built along the road, and construction work on all of them has been completed. Currently, the asphalting stage is underway.
All the works being carried out on the territory of Azerbaijan are planned to be completed by the middle of next year. Beyond simply facilitating trade, the corridor can strengthen economic independence, improve regional connectivity, and support the development of more diversified and resilient economies. This initiative, backed by the United States and its partners with the Trump route, envisions linking Asia to Europe via the South Caucasus. This framework represents a key regional segment connecting Azerbaijan's transport infrastructure with the wider global supply chain system. For Azerbaijan, it could expand non-oil exports and provide faster access to European markets. For Armenia, it offers a rare opportunity to overcome isolation and move beyond re-export dependency. And for Georgia, it presents a complementary role in connecting East and West through its Black Sea ports and multimodal logistics.
Typhoon Kalmagi has claimed nearly 200 lives in the Philippines and has now slammed into Vietnam, killing 5 people. Winds of at least 148 kilometers an hour have left widespread damage in both countries. Rescue efforts are underway as authorities warn of more heavy rain and flooding in the coming days.
At least 188 people have been killed in the Philippines and 5 people have died in Vietnam as Typhoon Kalmagi swept through both countries this week. Philippine officials said hundreds are missing and injured. Late on Thursday, the storm made landfall in central Vietnam, bringing strong winds of around 148 kilometers an hour and heavy rain before weakening inland. It uprooted trees, damaged homes, and caused widespread power outages. Authorities warned that rainfall could reach up to 200 millimeters in some provinces. The Vietnamese government has deployed more than 268,000 soldiers to support search and rescue efforts. Officials also cautioned that floods in low-lying regions could threaten farmlands in the Central Highlands, Vietnam's main coffee-producing area. In the Philippines, devastated residents described the severe impact on their communities.
I saw a banana being washed away and I grabbed it for breakfast. It's very hard because our food at home, like rice, also got washed away. We used to live here, but most of our houses have been swept away.
Philippine officials blamed poor infrastructure planning for the extensive damage.
Poorly planned, poorly executed, and we don't know if there are anomalies here. That will be up to the ICI investigators to find out. But definitely, someone should be held accountable here.
Kalmaegi is the 13th typhoon to form in the South China Sea this year. The Philippines Aviation Authority said airports remain on high alert as another storm is expected to hit parts of the country over the weekend.
Well, that is all we have on tonight's Prime Time. Please do join us tomorrow night for more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.